It was supposed to be a stupid bachelorette party dare. Cross the VIP velvet rope, kiss the terrifying stranger in the bespoke suit, and walk away. But when 240-pound Chloe Jenkins pressed her lips against the most dangerous crime boss in Chicago, he didn't pull a gun. He smiled. The bass in the obsidian room reverberated through the floorboards, vibrating against the soles of Chloe Jenkins's strappy heels. At 26, Chloe was an accountant by day, and according to her friends, the safe, reliable one by night. Tonight, however, she was wearing an emerald green silk wrap dress that hugged every single one of her 240 pounds. She knew she was fat, and most days she embraced it with a fiery confidence. But in a high-end Chicago nightclub, crawling with size 0 models and trust fund billionaires, the air felt suffocatingly judgmental. She was only here for Jessica Caldwell's bachelorette party. Jessica, a lifelong friend, was 3 tequila shots deep and practically vibrating with chaotic energy. Sitting across the sticky leather booth was Sarah Harding, the kind of friend who delivered thinly veiled insults disguised as jokes. "Okay, Chloe, your turn," Sarah slurred, slamming her empty shot glass onto the table. "Truth or dare?" Chloe sighed, adjusting the neckline of her dress. She wanted nothing more than to go home, put on her oversized sweatpants, and watch true crime documentaries. "Truth. Always truth, Sarah. You know me." "Boring," Jessica whined, leaning heavily against Chloe's shoulder. "Come on, Chloe. It's my bachelorette. Do a dare. Just one teeny, tiny dare." Chloe looked at Jessica's pleading, mascara-smudged eyes. She was tired of being the predictable one. The invisible, funny, fat friend who held everyone's hair back when they threw up. "Fine," Chloe said, a reckless surge of adrenaline hitting her bloodstream. "Dare." Sarah's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. She slowly turned her head, scanning the dark, neon-lit cavern of the club. Her gaze landed on the raised VIP section at the back of the room. It was cordoned off by heavy red velvet ropes and guarded by 3 men who looked like they benched small cars for breakfast. In the center of the VIP section sat a man who commanded the room without moving a muscle. He wore a charcoal, custom-tailored suit that looked devastatingly expensive. His dark hair was slicked back, and his sharp, angular face was illuminated by the amber glow of the whiskey glass in his hand. He radiated a cold, terrifying authority. "Him," Sarah said, pointing a manicured finger. Chloe's stomach plummeted. "Sarah, no, that's insane. Do you know who that is?" "It's just some rich guy," Sarah laughed. "No, it's not just some rich guy," Chloe hissed, lowering her voice. "That's Gabriel Moretti. I read an article about him in the Chicago Tribune last month. He's the head of the Moretti family. They run half the shipping ports on the East Coast. There was a federal investigation about him last year regarding the disappearance of Arthur Pendleton, that logistics CEO. The man is literal organized crime." "Oh, please don't be so dramatic," Sarah scoffed, rolling her eyes. "It's a dare. I dare you to go up there, bypass his security, and kiss him on the lips. If you don't do it, you have to pay for the entire VIP bottle service tonight." Chloe stared at the bill resting in the center of the table. $2,000. She barely had enough in her checking account to cover rent, let alone premium vodka she wasn't even drinking. Anger bubbled up in her chest. Sarah knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to humiliate her. She expected the fat girl to cower, to apologize, and to foot the bill. Chloe stood up. The emerald silk swished around her thick thighs. "Hold my purse," she said. Jessica gasped. "Chloe, wait, she was just kidding." But Chloe was already walking. The club felt like it was moving in slow motion. The heavy thumping bass matched the frantic pounding of her heart. She weaved through the throngs of sweaty, dancing bodies, keeping her eyes fixed on the man in the VIP booth. As she approached the velvet rope, 2 massive security guards stepped forward, forming an impenetrable wall of muscle. "Private section, miss. Step back," the taller one grunted, his hand resting casually inside his jacket. Chloe's mouth went dry, but before she could stutter an apology, a deep, raspy voice cut through the heavy club music. "Let her through, Matteo." The guards parted instantly, dropping the velvet rope. Chloe swallowed hard. She stepped onto the elevated platform. The air up here felt different, cooler, charged with electricity. Gabriel Moretti didn't stand up. He leaned back against the plush leather, resting one arm across the back of the booth. Up close, he was devastating. He had a scar slicing through his left eyebrow, adding a brutal edge to his classical aristocratic features. His eyes were the color of a stormy ocean, and they were fixed entirely on her. He didn't look at her with the dismissive sneer she usually got from men of his caliber. His gaze was heavy, sweeping over her full breasts, the curve of her hips, and back up to her flushed face. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Gabriel asked. His voice was low, coated in a thick, dark Italian accent that sent a shiver straight down her spine. "No," Chloe breathed. She had to do this fast before her courage completely evaporated. She took a step forward, closing the distance between them. She reached down, her trembling hands grabbing the lapels of his $1,000 suit. She expected him to shove her away. She expected the guards to tackle her. Instead, Gabriel remained perfectly still, watching her with intense, terrifying curiosity. Chloe leaned down and smashed her lips against his. It was supposed to be a quick, closed-mouth peck. A tactical strike to win a bet. But the moment their lips touched, something snapped. Gabriel's large, calloused hand came up, wrapping firmly around the back of her thick neck, holding her in place. He opened his mouth against hers, turning the clumsy dare into a consuming, searing kiss. He tasted like expensive bourbon, mint, and raw, unfiltered power. Chloe gasped against his mouth, her knees going weak. His other hand settled heavily on her wide hip, his thumb pressing into the soft flesh through the silk dress. He kissed her like a starving man, thoroughly and dominantly, stealing the breath from her lungs. When he finally broke the kiss, Chloe pulled back, her chest heaving, her lipstick smeared. The entire VIP section was dead silent. The guards stared in absolute shock. Gabriel looked up at her, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his lips. He ran a thumb over his own mouth, catching a smudge of her cherry-red lipstick. "Well," he murmured, his eyes blazing, "that is certainly one way to get my attention." Panic finally crashed over Chloe. What had she just done? She had assaulted a Mafia boss. I have to go," she stammered, backing away so fast she nearly tripped over her own heels. Gabriel didn't try to stop her. He just watched her run, his dark eyes tracking the sway of her hips until she disappeared into the crowded club. By Monday morning, Chloe had successfully convinced herself that the entire incident was a fever dream. She sat in her dreary grey cubicle at Harrison and Gable Accounting, staring at a complex Excel spreadsheet. Her head pounded with a residual headache from the weekend's anxiety. She had fled the club, dragged Jessica and Sarah into a cab, and locked herself in her apartment for 48 hours, waiting for Mafia hitmen to kick down her door. But nobody came. The world kept spinning. "Chloe!" a sharp voice barked. Chloe flinched. Her boss, Richard Gable, a balding, perpetually sweaty man with a penchant for micromanagement, was leaning over her partition. "I need the quarterly projections for the Miller account by noon. And fix your posture. You're taking up the whole aisle," he sneered, a cruel jab at her size that he disguised as a workspace complaint. "Yes, Mr. Gable," Chloe muttered, biting the inside of her cheek to keep from crying. She turned back to her monitor, resigning herself to a life of tedious math and casual disrespect. She was a brilliant accountant, holding a master's degree from Northwestern, but Richard made sure she stayed at the bottom of the corporate ladder, hiding her in the back corner of the office. At exactly 2:15 p.m., the monotonous hum of the office was shattered. The heavy glass doors of the firm swung open with a violent crash. The receptionist let out a startled shriek. Chloe stood up, peering over her cubicle wall. 3 men in sharp, dark suits entered the lobby. 2 of them were the massive security guards from the club, Matteo and a slightly shorter, equally terrifying man. But it was the man walking between them that made the blood freeze in Chloe's veins. Gabriel Moretti. He was wearing a navy blue 3-piece suit today, looking even more formidable under the harsh fluorescent lights of the accounting firm. The entire office fell dead silent. Keyboards stopped clacking. Phones rang, unanswered. Richard Gable stormed out of his glass office, his face purple with rage. "Excuse me, who do you think you are? You can't just barge in here." Matteo stepped forward, grabbing Richard by the collar of his cheap shirt and lifting him an inch off the ground. Richard squeaked, his bravado instantly evaporating. Gabriel didn't even look at the manager. His storm-grey eyes scanned the sea of cubicles with predatory precision. Then they locked onto Chloe. He walked down the narrow aisle, his presence dwarfing the cramped corporate environment. He stopped right in front of her desk. "Hello, Chloe," Gabriel said smoothly. Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs. How do you know my name?" "I know everything about you," he replied casually, leaning his hip against her desk. "Chloe Jenkins, 26, graduated top of your class. You live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side. You have a younger sister named Lily, who requires expensive treatments for chronic kidney disease, which is why you put up with working for this pathetic excuse for a firm." Chloe gasped, taking a step back until her hips hit the filing cabinet. "Are you going to kill me?" she whispered, terrified. "Because of the kiss? It was just a dare. I swear I didn't mean any disrespect." Gabriel laughed. It was a rich, dark sound that sent a jolt of confusing warmth through her belly. "Kill you?" He reached out, his long fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His touch was shockingly tender. "Why would I destroy the most fascinating thing to happen to me in a decade? Women in my world are terrified of me. They are skinny, fragile little birds who agree with every word I say to survive. But you walked right past my armed security, grabbed me by the suit, and kissed the absolute life out of me on a Friday night. I was drunk," she stammered, her cheeks burning hot. "Perhaps," Gabriel murmured, his eyes dropping to her lips. "But I was completely sober, and I have not stopped thinking about how perfectly you fit against me." He turned his head to look at Richard Gable, who was still being held by Matteo. "Mr. Gable," Gabriel commanded. The tone of his voice was absolute ice. Yes?" Richard stammered, trembling violently. "As of 30 minutes ago, my holding company acquired a 70% controlling stake in Harrison and Gable Accounting. I am your new boss." A collective gasp echoed through the office. Chloe stared at Gabriel in disbelief. "Now," Gabriel continued, his voice echoing in the quiet room, You will pack your things, Richard. You are fired for creating a hostile work environment and for chronically underpaying my top accountant. Matteo, kindly escort him out. Wait, you can't, Richard cried as Matteo practically dragged him toward the door. My name is on the building. I'll have it painted over by tomorrow. Gabriel dismissed him with a wave of his hand. Gabriel turned his full attention back to Chloe, who was standing paralyzed in her sensible black skirt and cardigan. Grab your coat, Chloe, Gabriel said, offering her his arm. Where are we going? She asked, her voice trembling. To lunch. Le Petit Bison, specifically. We need to discuss your promotion to Chief Financial Officer, Gabriel stated, a dangerous smirk playing on his lips. And after that, we need to discuss the medical debt I just paid off for your sister this morning. Chloe's breath hitched. You did what? Why? Why are you doing this? Gabriel stepped closer, invading her personal space. His hand wrapped around her waist, pulling her plush, curved body flush against his hard frame, right in the middle of the office. Because you kissed me on a dare, Chloe, Gabriel whispered, his lips grazing her ear, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. And in my world, if you take something from a man like me, you belong to him. I am calling your bluff, Gatina. You played a dangerous game, and now I am claiming my prize. 3 weeks had passed since Gabriel Moretti walked into Harrison and Gable Accounting and fundamentally altered the trajectory of Chloe Jenkins' existence. The transition from a marginalized, underpaid employee to the chief financial officer of Moretti Holdings was nothing short of a violent whiplash. Chloe now sat behind a desk carved from a single, polished slab of dark mahogany on the top floor of a skyscraper in the Loop. Her office was larger than her entire South Side apartment, boasting floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding, panoramic view of the Chicago skyline. Gabriel had not simply given her a title. He had given her absolute authority. On her second day, he dumped 30 ledgers onto her desk, the legitimate and slightly less legitimate financial records of his empire, and told her to fix the bleeding. Chloe, armed with her brilliant analytical mind and a desperate need to prove she wasn't just a mafia boss's charity case, had restructured his shell companies, optimized his tax liabilities, and increased his legitimate quarterly profits by 14%. She was in her element. But the most shocking change wasn't the corner office or the power. It was how Gabriel treated her. In a world obsessed with hollow, sharp-angled perfection, Gabriel worshipped every single inch of Chloe's 240-pound frame. He bought her a completely new wardrobe. Gone were the frumpy cardigans and sensible skirts meant to hide her body. In their place were custom-tailored silk dresses, cashmere coats, and structured blazers that accentuated her heavy breasts and wide hips. When they attended high society galas, he paraded her into the room with a terrifying pride, his large hand possessively resting on the curve of her thick waist. If any socialite or rival businessman dared to look at her with even a hint of disdain, Gabriel's storm-gray eyes would issue a silent, lethal warning that instantly choked the oxygen out of the room. He made her feel powerful. He made her feel beautiful. Yet the criminal underworld is a breeding ground for jealousy and vengeance, and Chloe's sudden elevation had not gone unnoticed. It started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Chloe was sitting in a high-end coffee shop near Magnificent Mile, waiting for an espresso. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah Harding walked in. Sarah looked exactly the same as she had on the night of the bachelorette party, sharp, thin, and radiating a toxic, nervous energy. "Chloe, oh my God, I've been trying to call you for weeks," Sarah gushed, sliding into the velvet chair opposite Chloe without an invitation. Chloe stiffened. "I changed my number, Sarah. After you and Jessica left me at the club to face a cartel boss alone, I figured our friendship had run its course." Sarah's perfectly contoured face fell into a mask of exaggerated guilt. I know, I was terrified, but look at you now. You're wearing Prada, Chloe. Prada. Everyone is talking about it. You're practically Chicago royalty now. Gabriel Moretti's new obsession." Sarah leaned in, her eyes darting around the cafe. "Listen, I actually came to warn you. I'm dating this guy, Lorenzo. He works for Dominic Russo. You know the Russo family?" Chloe's blood ran cold. She knew the name perfectly well from the ledgers. The Russo family was Gabriel's primary rival in the downtown real estate extortion racket. "What about them?" Chloe asked, keeping her voice incredibly steady. "Lorenzo says Dominic is furious," Sarah whispered, her eyes gleaming with a sick, voyeuristic excitement. "He says Gabriel is distracted by you. He says you're Gabriel's weak point. Richard Gable, your old boss, he went to Russo. He told him that Gabriel gave a fat, amateur accountant the keys to the kingdom. They are planning something, Chloe. You need to be careful." Chloe stared at her former friend. Beneath the fake concern, she saw the bitter, ugly jealousy practically seeping from Sarah's pores. Sarah didn't come here to warn her. She came here to revel in Chloe's potential downfall. Furthermore, how did Sarah know she was at this specific coffee shop? "Thank you for the warning, Sarah," Chloe said, standing up and smoothing down her bespoke wool skirt. "But I assure you, I am no one's weak point. And if I were you, I would tell your boyfriend Lorenzo to find a new employer by midnight, because Gabriel doesn't share this city." Chloe walked out, her heart hammering against her ribs. She immediately dialed Matteo, her assigned bodyguard, who was waiting in the black SUV down the block. "Matteo, we need to go to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Now," Chloe ordered as she climbed into the back seat. "I need to check on Lily." Her younger sister was receiving cutting-edge dialysis treatments on Gabriel's dime, and panic was rising in Chloe's throat. If Russo wanted to hit Gabriel where it hurt, going after the sister of his new obsession was the ultimate play. The drive to the hospital was a blur of rain and traffic. When they pulled into the subterranean parking garage beneath the medical center, the air felt dense and suffocating. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, ominous shadows over the concrete pillars. Matteo parked the SUV near the elevator banks. "Stay here, Miss Jenkins. Let me clear the perimeter first." Matteo stepped out of the vehicle, his hand hovering over the holster concealed beneath his jacket. He took exactly 3 steps before the trap was sprung. 2 black vans suddenly screeched out from behind a row of parked cars, boxing the SUV in. The side doors slammed open, and 6 men wearing tactical gear poured out. Matteo drew his weapon with blinding speed, dropping the first man with a shot to the chest, but another struck Matteo in the back of the head with the butt of a rifle. The massive bodyguard crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Chloe screamed, scrambling for the opposite door, but it was wrenched open before she could reach the handle. A rough hand grabbed her by the hair, hauling her violently out of the luxury vehicle and throwing her onto the cold, grease-stained concrete. She scraped her palms, her breath leaving her in a painful rush. As she struggled to push herself up, a pair of expensive Italian leather shoes stepped into her field of vision. Chloe looked up. Standing over her, flanked by armed thugs, was a man with slicked-back grey hair and a cruel, jagged smile. Next to him stood Richard Gable, looking terrified but smug. "Well, well, well," Dominic Russo purred, looking down at Chloe with absolute disgust. Gabriel Moretti's little pet a pig. You know, when Richard here told me Moretti lost his mind over a plus-size pencil pusher, I didn't believe him. But here you are, all dressed up in silk, playing Mafia queen. Get away from me, Chloe snarled, refusing to cry. She forced herself to stand up, ignoring the agonizing pain in her knees. She drew herself up to her full height, her imposing presence and heavy curves taking up space, refusing to shrink. You're a liability, Russo sneered. Moretti is bleeding territory because he's too busy playing house with you. So I'm going to do him a favor. I'm going to send you back to him in several small, reasonably priced boxes. Grab her. Two men stepped forward, grabbing Chloe's arms. Wait, Chloe said, her voice echoing sharply through the cavernous garage. She looked Russo dead in the eye, channeling every ounce of Gabriel's cold, terrifying authority. You think Gabriel is bleeding territory? You're a fool, Dominic. I've seen the ledgers, both his and yours. Russo froze, holding up a hand to stop his men. What did you say? I'm the CFO of Moretti Holdings, Chloe said, a vicious, predatory smile crossing her face. I know about your offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I know about the 3 shell companies you use to launder money through the sanitation union. I know that as of last Thursday, you are over-leveraged by $12 million. And if the feds pull the thread on your Cayman accounts, you will spend the rest of your miserable life in federal prison. Russo's face turned an ugly shade of magenta. You're bluffing, you fat bitch. Try me, Chloe challenged, her chin held high. I routed a dead man's switch to the IRS this morning. If I don't check in by 5 p.m., every single one of your financial records gets emailed directly to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. You touch one hair on my head, Dominic, and your entire empire burns to ash by dinner time. Silence fell over the garage, broken only by the sound of dripping water. Richard Gable whimpered, taking a step away from Russo. Russo stared at Chloe, genuine fear finally replacing the disgust in his eyes. He realized too late that Gabriel Moretti hadn't chosen a weak point. He had chosen a weapon. You're a monster, just like him, Russo whispered. No, a deep, raspy voice echoed from the shadows behind the vans. She is much, much smarter than me. Dominic Russo spun around, pulling a customized pistol from his waistband. He didn't even get the chance to raise it. A suppressed gunshot coughed through the damp air. The bullet shattered Russo's kneecap. He shrieked in agony, collapsing onto the concrete, his gun clattering out of reach. From the shadows, Gabriel Moretti emerged. He looked like the devil incarnate. He wore no jacket. His white dress shirt rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and dark ink. His storm-grey eyes were completely devoid of mercy. Behind him, a dozen Moretti enforcers stepped out from the darkness, raising assault rifles. Russo's men, severely outnumbered and outgunned, immediately dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Gabriel didn't look at Russo's men. He didn't look at the bleeding mob boss on the floor. He looked entirely at Chloe. He walked slowly toward her, his heavy footsteps echoing like a death knell. He stopped in front of her, gently taking her scraped, trembling hands in his. He inspected the ruined skin, his jaw ticking with a rage so profound it seemed to lower the temperature in the room. Are you harmed anywhere else, Gatina? Gabriel asked softly. I'm okay, Chloe breathed, the adrenaline finally crashing, leaving her shaking. Matteo needs a doctor. Gabriel nodded. Two of his men immediately rushed to the unconscious bodyguard. Gabriel finally turned his attention to the trash on the floor. He stepped over to Dominic Russo, staring down at the writhing, pathetic man. Next to him, Richard Gable had fallen to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "Dominic," Gabriel said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I warned you 3 years ago to stay out of my territory. Now, you ambush my CFO. You put hands on my woman. Gabriel, please. She threatened my accounts. She's a witch," Russo cried out, clutching his shattered knee. Gabriel chuckled, a dark, sinister sound. "Yes, she is. And she is mine." Gabriel drew his own weapon. He didn't hesitate. He shot Russo directly between the eyes. Chloe gasped, jumping back as blood splattered across the concrete, a few crimson drops staining the hem of her expensive silk skirt. Richard Gable screamed, covering his face with his hands, begging for his life in a puddle of his own urine. Gabriel looked at Gable with utter disdain. "Take this maggot to the warehouse at the docks," he ordered his men. "And find a low-level Russo runner named Lorenzo. Bring him and his girlfriend, Sarah Harding, to the warehouse as well. Nobody betrays my family and walks away." "Yes, boss," the men chorused, dragging the sobbing Richard Gable toward a van. Within 90 seconds, the garage was clear of enemies. It was just Gabriel and Chloe, standing amidst the carnage. Gabriel holstered his weapon. His white shirt was splattered with microscopic drops of blood. He looked at Chloe, waiting. This was the moment of truth. This was the moment women usually broke, screamed, and ran from the monster he truly was. He braced himself for her terror. Instead, Chloe looked down at the blood on her skirt, took a deep, shuddering breath and closed the distance between them. She wrapped her thick arms around his waist, burying her face into his chest. She breathed in the scent of his expensive cologne mixed with the sharp, metallic tang of gunpowder. She wasn't running. She was anchoring herself to him. Gabriel let out a ragged breath, wrapping his arms fiercely around her soft, plush back. He buried his face in her hair, holding her so tightly she could feel the frantic, violent beating of his heart. "You didn't run," he whispered against her ear, his voice thick with an emotion he had never allowed himself to feel. "I'm an accountant, Gabriel," Chloe said, looking up at him, her eyes fierce and unwavering. "I know how to calculate risk, and a life without you is the only risk I'm not willing to take." Gabriel groaned, a primal sound of absolute surrender. He cupped her cheeks, tilting her head back, and kissed her. It wasn't the drunken, chaotic kiss from the nightclub. It was a brand. It was a vow. He kissed her with the desperate, consuming hunger of a man who had finally found the one soul dark enough, strong enough, and brave enough to stand beside him in hell. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her easily despite her weight, proving once again that she was a treasure to be held, not a burden to be borne. As he carried her out of the darkness and into the waiting convoy, Chloe Jenkins realized she was no longer just the fat, invisible friend. She was a queen in a world of wolves, and the most dangerous predator of all belonged entirely to her. What a twisted, dramatic conclusion. Chloe proved she wasn't just a damsel in distress. She used her brains to conquer the Mafia world and secure her place as the queen of the Moretti Empire. From an unwanted dare to a bloody, eternal claim, this romance had it all. Did you expect Sarah to betray her, or for Chloe to outsmart Dominic Russo? Let us know in the comments below. If you loved this intense, real-life Mafia drama, please like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more thrilling stories.